Now, we were talking there about England's coronavirus lockdown. Although that will last at least till the start of December, Wales's so-called firebreak lockdown ends tomorrow. So to talk more about this, we're joined from Cardiff by the First Minister, Mark Drakeford. Thank you very much for being on the programme. So has your firebreak been a success?
Well, we've said all along that we won't know the effect of the firebreak until beyond the firebreak period. But early indications, particularly in things like travel, tell us that people in Wales have done what we've asked of them. They've stayed at home, they've worked from home, they've avoided contact with other people. And when we come out of our firebreak period tomorrow, then we will need to go on doing everything we can to keep this virus under proper suppression.
It's good to see that you think the compliance has been pretty good. But at the same time, if you look at the numbers, weekly infection rates are rising in 14 of the 22 Welsh councils. There are now more COVID cases per 100,000 people than when lockdown began. It doesn't sound like it's worked.
But that was inevitable, Sophie, wasn't it? The people who have been falling ill during the 2 weeks of the firebreak period were already infectious before the firebreak period began. We were absolutely certain that we would see those numbers continue to rise during the firebreak period itself. It is only in the couple of weeks after the 9th of November that we will see the impact of the firebreak. Then is when we hope to see numbers declining. That is when we expect the number of people going into our hospitals to begin to go into reverse.
I mean, I understand with hospitalisations, and sadly, of course, with deaths as well, there will be a lag. But I'm talking about case numbers. Is it really responsible to lift restrictions when cases seem to be going up?
Well, the advice that we had when we went into our 17-day firebreak period was that so long as we had a short but sharp period of restrictions, and really people in Wales in these 17 days, we've been back where we were at the end of March and beginning of April in terms of restrictions on people's lives, that provided we did everything we could over those 17 days, that would be sufficient. And as I say, it's not a surprise at all that people who were falling ill as the firebreak began continue to feed into the system during the firebreak period. It's beyond it. We've always said that we will see the pluses that we have gained through the actions we have taken.
And what if you don't see the outcome that you're hoping in the weeks ahead? What if cases continue to rise? Will you reintroduce a lockdown?
Well, we think we have a path through to Christmas where we won't need to take action of this sort again. It depends, though, crucially, not simply on how people behaved during the firebreak period, but on how we all behave in the weeks that follow it. I've been saying to people in Wales that the question each one of us must ask ourselves is not, what can I do? How far can I stretch the rules? But what should I do? What should I do to keep myself and other people safe? And if we avoid contact with other people, if we travel only when we need to, if we work from home wherever we can, we will build on what has been achieved here over the last 17 days, and that will give us a path through to Christmas without needing to go back into this extraordinary period of restriction.
Now, you've also said previously that you don't want to return to this network of local restrictions that was in place before the firebreak. But if you look at some pockets in Wales, there's clearly a concern about case numbers. Merthyr Tydfil, for example, now has the worst infection rate in the whole of the United Kingdom. And yet people living there are coming out of lockdown. Should you not be rethinking this?
Well, what we've said is that we will not go back and rely on a patchwork of local measures. We are going to have a new national set of rules that are clearer and I hope simpler and therefore easier to follow. That does not mean, of course, that if there are local flare-ups, that local action may not need to be taken. But it will not be a reliance on entirely local measures. We ended up in Wales with quite a patchwork of different local restrictions, quite hard for people to follow. A national set, simpler, clearer, and therefore we hope easier for people to abide by is the key way ahead. Does that mean that local measures will not be needed to supplement that in some cases? No, it doesn't, and we've never ruled that out.
Interesting. So it could be, for example, that people in Merthyr, if those case numbers continue to rise, could see local restrictions being imposed.
Well, if there are local restrictions, we will target them at the cause of the numbers. Merthyr, as you know, is the smallest borough in the whole of Wales. Relatively low raw numbers drive quite big percentage and rate numbers. If in Merthyr there are specific reasons, we had, for example, earlier in the pandemic, a factory in Merthyr where there was an outbreak. What we will do, instead of taking county-wide measures, we will try to think of more targeted things that we can do to bear down on the cause of any local flare-ups.
Interesting stuff. Now, of course, Wales is coming out of lockdown while England is just starting a lockdown. Does there need to be restrictions from people from Wales travelling to the rest of the United Kingdom?
Well, people from Wales won't be allowed to travel into England because of the English lockdown rules. But we don't want to see people travelling. People who need to travel for work and medical appointments and so on, of course, that's necessary travel. But if you don't have a good reason for travelling, our advice, our strong advice to people in Wales is not to do it. The more people mingle, and that includes travelling, the more this virus likes it. So our strong advice to people in Wales is travel only where you have a really necessary reason for doing so, and that certainly includes, at this point, travelling across the border.
Now, you said a bit earlier in the interview that you were hoping that the action that you've already taken means that it won't be necessary to impose another Wales lockdown before Christmas. Boris Johnson has said that the four nations are working on a joint approach to the Christmas period. So what could that look like?
Well, can I just say, I think it is really important that we have a four-nation approach to Christmas. So many families in Wales have their friends and other family members in other parts of the United Kingdom and vice versa. So we were promised last week by Michael Gove, the Minister in charge of the Cabinet Office, that we will have another four-nation meeting in this coming week so that we can pool ideas, plan together, have a common approach to the Christmas period. I really hope that meeting materialises, because it is only by getting round the table and sharing the position each one of us faces, the challenges we have, the common solutions that we can craft, that we can get to where I want us to be. And as I say, that is a single approach right across the United Kingdom for everyone over the Christmas period.
So does that mean that you're hoping that people will be able to go and see their loved ones, their families over Christmas?
Well, Christmas is a very special time for all of us. The restrictions people have had to live with are incredibly difficult and demanding. Everybody is tired and fatigued of coronavirus. If we could offer some respite over the Christmas period, that is what we would want to do. But it needs to be a common plan and a common approach, where the rules are the same as much as we can make them right across the United Kingdom for that very special period. But as I say, the only way to do that is for us to have that opportunity to meet and talk together. We've been promised we'll have that opportunity this week. I really hope that the United Kingdom government is serious about this and make certain that those opportunities exist for us all.
From your conversations with the Westminster government, do you think they are preparing to lift restrictions over Christmas?
Well, we haven't had those discussions yet. And the history of coronavirus so far is that the United Kingdom government is a bit inclined to think about the United Kingdom when there is a crisis that they themselves are facing. Then we are called, often at short notice, around the table again, as we were at the start of this previous week. You can't do that for Christmas. You need a forward plan. You need a plan in advance. That's why I am very keen indeed to see us meet next week. And if we do that, then we will be able to think together about what is possible. We will still be in the grip of a public health emergency that will not have gone away. That is why thinking ahead, planning ahead and having a common plan is so important.
OK, Mark Drakeford, thank you very much for coming on the programme and explaining that Welsh lockdown. Thank you.